Plenty of videos on Warzone will tell you how to improve your gameplay, with tips and tricks you can follow as well as guides to use. What a lot of these videos don't cover, however, is the mistakes that players can regularly make which hinders their performance. It's all well and good knowing advanced tactics, but that's no good to you if you died to something easily avoidable before you can use them. This video is going to be dedicated to covering 10 major mistakes that players make in Warzone and how to avoid them. These are common mistakes that I'm guilty of making myself and that I've seen across the various modes in Warzone. If you're concerned about wins or kills, then you definitely want to be avoiding these. These are all in no particular order, and each one is equally important to having success in Warzone. I want to start by covering a big mistake that I encounter time and time again: not pushing your advantage. If you break an enemy's armor or down an enemy as part of a team, then you have an advantage. If you decide not to push because you're scared of dying or don't think the situation is absolutely 100% perfect, then you're just making your life harder. The longer you spend waiting around, the more time an enemy player or team has to regroup. It doesn't take long for the tables to turn in Warzone. If you give the enemy the chance to replay, fall back to cover, or move to higher ground, you can find that any advantage you had gets lost seriously quickly. To avoid this, make the most of whatever advantage comes your way. Be decisive, make a judgment call and commit to a proper push. Don't hang back and do nothing, as it doesn't take long for an enemy to recover. I know it can be tempting to want to wait for the perfect opportunity to get a kill, and dying is frustrating, but that opportunity may never come. Be confident in yourself and take a risk. That's what Warzone is all about. Mistake number 2, linked very closely to number 1, is don't pick a fight you can't win. Plenty of times it can feel so tempting to charge in and take on a team or a well-positioned enemy player. Being the hero or the pro player who drops the impossible enemy is a very appealing prospect, but it's very rarely going to end in your favour. Pushing an enemy who has a big tactical advantage, a big numbers advantage, or is maybe just playing better than you at that particular point in time is not a sensible idea. Warzone relies on tactical play. If the odds are stacked against you, then don't be afraid to bail. Recognising an advantage and recognising a disadvantage are close cousins and equally important. If you see a situation unfolding that you don't think you can win, then don't bother. Run off, hide, live to fight another day. It's much better to fight on a level playing field in any situation. Remember that dying in solos is the end of your match, and in team modes, dying places your teammates at a greater risk. Number 3 on this list dives into a very specific piece of advice, and that is to not bother with self-revives. For $4,500, you can buy much more useful equipment for you and or your team. There's a big misconception that a self-revive offers a guaranteed second chance and no respawn second life. That's just not true. A self-revive is only useful if you're either downed at range behind cover where you can revive yourself safely, or when you die at close range and the enemy you're fighting has a terrible attention span and doesn't finish you. They get more useless the further the game progresses, as there's less space and opportunity to revive yourself. You're much better off spending this money on a UAV, cluster strike or precision airstrike. These kill streaks are useful in far more situations and you're much more likely to get some genuine benefit out of them. Don't place all your hopes in a self-revive, as you're more than likely to just die before you can use them. So number 4 is going to be another specific one, and that's to weave when you're using a vehicle. Yes, weaving at all times is pretty annoying, but you should at least be doing it when you're being shot at or going past a populated area. Only the cargo truck can survive more than one direct explosive. Any other vehicle goes down in one. This means that you and possibly your entire team can be wiped out by a single C4 or RPG. Going in a straight line or predictable movement pattern makes you a much easier target than if your path is unpredictable. It may feel nice and safe to be charging around the map in a Jeep, but in reality, you're much more at risk than you would otherwise be. You need to remember that enemies can see you coming a mile away on the radar. Stay on the lookout for enemies and make your movements as erratic as possible if you start drawing attention. This will make you as difficult as possible to hit, preventing a very abrupt end to your game. Mistake number 5 takes us back to a more general piece of advice, which is landing poorly. It doesn't matter if it's late game respawn or the first drop of the match. Messing up where you land is a major problem. Often, I see players racing each other to guns, multiple teams landing on individual buildings, or just landing in a weak position. None of these are a good idea. It doesn't matter how good of a player you are, when you land, you have nothing. You need to put yourself in the best position possible to grab the loot you want and need for the rest of the match. Pick a building you know the layout of, generally has good loot and is in a decent position. You don't want to be battling out over the scraps, as this is when luck is very involved in who wins gunfights. If an area is too hot for you to get a decent amount of loot from, pick somewhere else. There's no point wasting your time somewhere full of players if you haven't got a real chance of coming out on top. Keeping with the theme of general advice for now, mistake number 6 is not using cover effectively. Whenever you think you're going to be dealing with other players, or suspect there may be some people nearby, you need to be making the most out of whatever cover you have around. Engaging a player when you're out in the open will see you get downed rather quickly. If the enemy doesn't kill you, a player you haven't even seen yet could quite easily shoot you from one of the many exposed angles you'll have if you aren't in cover properly. Being in cover makes you a more difficult target and lets you take your shots with far more confidence. While some scenarios mean that you won't have much cover available, like running through a forest or across the frozen river near dam, the majority of places on this map offer you at least something. Even using small rocks or trees can be enough to give you the time to get out of the line of fire in a gunfight. It doesn't matter what it is, so long as you do it right. You want to be thinking about cover in advance if at all possible. Number 7 is taking us back to specifics, and that is not running suppressors, ghost, or not running both at the same time. Everyone knows stealth is of the utmost importance in Warzone. There's so many situations that it comes in handy and that it will save you from a world of pain in. Suppressed weapons keep you off the map until you've got a loadout, which is great. I appreciate you can't always control the weapons you have prior to a loadout drop, but it's definitely preferable to stay off the map than on it. When you do get a loadout, having ghost is essential as it preserves your stealth and keeps you off of UAVs. If you're running a class that has one and not the other, you're totally defeating the point of whatever you're using. Using an unsuppressed gun with ghost just turns you into a shining beacon whenever you start fighting. Using a suppressed gun without ghost just means that other players will know where you are whenever they call in a UAV, which isn't ideal either. Both are crucial for success in Warzone. Each depends on the other one to work effectively, and not running one of them is one of the most basic rookie mistakes that you can see in Warzone. 8th on this list is all about the ring, specifically not paying attention to it. Plenty of times I myself have suddenly found it to be late game and I've been merrily running around without a care in the world. This is not a good idea. If you're not paying attention to the ring, you're not watching out for likely areas where players are going to be forced to move by it. This can leave you out and exposed, caught off guard by players you really should have seen coming. You want to be aware of where the current ring is and how players will be moving from that one to the next. This will save you being surprised by players and allow you to get set up and ready to deal with any. It also means you can plan your next move and have a clear strategy in mind. Don't be one of those guys who charges around the map and randomly finds themselves late game. This does work out every now and then, but it is not a consistently reliable tactic if you're concerned about wins. Now, one of the last things I want to cover, number 9, is consistently re-peeking the same angle and staying static. If you're engaging an enemy or enemies, then shooting from one place is not a smart play. If you keep using the same angle, it only takes one player to pre-aim that line of sight and you're done for. The time to kill in this game is unforgiving, so having a predictable combat style isn't what you want. It makes you an easier target with not just weapons, but explosives, tacticals, and even kill streaks, all of which will make you easier to kill. Instead, maintain a dynamic playstyle. Make use of baiting enemies into breaking cover, play on multiple lines of sight, and stay on the move. Make yourself difficult to predict and harder to hit. You want an enemy to only figure out where you are when they've already taken damage and can't do anything about it. Last, but by no means least, is the mistake of letting losses get to you. I don't want this to be overly spiritual or anything like that, but don't psych yourself out by the one mistake you made. If you die, or choke a kill, or lose the match for any other reason, don't stress it. Solos games have 149 other players trying to win, whilst quads or trios games have dozens of other teams going for the same objective as you. You won't win every game you play, and that's just fact. Thinking that just because you messed up at some point means you're going to have a bad day is the wrong attitude. Don't let mistakes get to you. Pick yourself up and move on. The best players learn from their mistakes and use it to improve their playstyle. Take a break if you need to, but just go into each game fresh. Make sure you're focused and relaxed. If you want to sweat out wins, then get in that mindset. Or if you want to just chill, then get yourself into the mindset to do that. Players who get overly fixated on their mistakes just play worse and get in a cycle of failure that's hard to break out of. These 10 mistakes are all common in Warzone, but are easy to avoid if you're aware of them. If you're focused, it's very easy to ensure you don't end up making one of these mistakes and placing yourself at a disadvantage. By following this advice, I hope you can give yourself that extra bit of an edge that you need in your Warzone gameplay. These have just been my personal opinions though, and you may disagree with me, which is absolutely fine. Just treat this as a guide on which you can build your own strategy. Play to your strengths and you'll be in the best position possible to come out on top in Warzone.